Athstat experience.
Welcome back to the Benchmarkers Rugby Show. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Kumbi, and I'm a data scientist. But for these videos, we scratch that data science stuff, right? So for these videos, I'm more of the rugby fan, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Yes, so I too am a data scientist. My name's Nyasha. Thanks, Kumbi. And this side, we don't scratch the data science.
Yeah.
I bring in the AI analysis, just bring in the stats, look at the stats, try, put some. I give you the numbers, and then Kumbi gives you the context, and together we feel like we're the perfect pairing, and hopefully you find value in what we do.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. It could be
Right.
that.
Week 3. We're done with week 3. Like it's been amazing. Like the first 3 weeks of the Rugby World Cup have been fantastic. We've just seen probably the best, the best game of the year so far. You know, maybe you're competing with like France, Ireland, also in the Six Nations was quite good. But I think this was a very good game. So so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be looking back at what went right, what went wrong. For both teams, for Ireland, and just reflecting even on the predictions that we made in the previous in our previous episode. So that means today we're going to be focusing a bit more on the data, right? So that's going to be our forefront. So I'm going to throw it back to to our data guy, right? And he's going to tell us how it went.
Of course, right. So just as a recap, last week we we have a model that runs a simulation of the game and tries to predict how the game will pan out, and how the losing team in quotes could possibly overpower the winning team, right? So on your screen, right, as you can see, we had predicted the values for territory, scrum success, tackle success, line outs, line breaks, runs, defenders beaten, mauls, and predicted Ireland as the winner with a 51% chance. So, right, what we're just going to look at is, firstly, what we predicted versus how it played out, right? So just starting off here, we had predicted 48% territory for South Africa and 52 for Ireland, and that prediction was pretty much spot on, right? With by the way, that bottom row you can see the team written there is the team predicted to win that particular KPI, right? So that one was spot on. Scrum success, we predicted South Africa winning. And that is how it worked out. Tackle success, again, we predicted South Africa winning, and that's how it worked out. Now for line out success, again, we predicted Ireland winning. Now, despite how they started, they actually they did actually go. No, wait, that one, I think South Africa won.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, but man, that could have cost Ireland the game, right? And then with line breaks, well, here it's actually supposed to be clean breaks. That was a tie. I think it was 4 each. Runs, we predicted Ireland, winning that, and of course they won that. But that is their style, right? Defenders beaten South Africa. We predicted them winning, and they did. And mauls, we predicted South Africa winning, and it was actually a tie with 1 maul 1 each. Right. So ultimately, it was predicted to be a close game, and it was. And this goes to show the model. While we look at a lot of KPIs, these are what we just choose to present. But according to the model, these are the ones with the highest correlation to a team winning. Right. Obviously, other than points, conversions, and kicks, which we'll get to later. But just from just obviously looking at the non-scoring actions, these are the ones with the highest KPI. So one, we're happy with the model, but I'm just going to pass it on to you, Kumbi. Give us more context here.
I mean, like, first of all, well done to the numbers guys. Like the first thing, we predicted 51% chance, so that's a very close game. Obviously, that game came down to the wire, so that's very impressive. And like getting the territory, spot on, and basically every other stat I think line out. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at how the predicted KPIs for each teams, like for the stats where we said each team would win and how that played out, right? So we're gonna start with South Africa. So I think the first thing that we'll note is that when we do these analyses, we hadn't seen the teams that came out, right? So for South Africa, We predicted scrums, they would win scrums, more tackle success, more defenders beaten, more mauls, right? So they basically won all of those things for mauls, which there was, like you said, there was a tie.
Yeah.
But essentially, when you're looking at those stats, right, those are physicality stats, right? So when you look at South Africa and Ireland, these are two teams, and, obviously France as well, but when you're looking at these two teams, these are two teams that know exactly who they are. They know what their playing identity is. And when you look at the stats, it also reflects, right? So with South Africa, for instance, right, the 4 stats that I mentioned are physicality stats, right? So they know that that's how they win with their forwards, essentially. So the one thing that then happened after we recorded is that South Africa then decided to go with a 7-1 split, right? Which was very interesting. One of the talking points, the massive talking points of the week last week, right? So they went with 7 forwards on the bench, which meant they only had one guy in the back covering the back line, was Kobus Reiner. And so because of that, so the thing is, the 7-1 split, whatever your opinion is of the 7-1 split, that thing works. Because if you look at one of the interesting things that happens is, the domination, when you look at South Africa's domination, so even though Ireland might be able to match up with the scrum, and all these things, at some point it will falter. I don't think there's a team in World Rugby that can compete with South Africa for 80 minutes straight, right? So you might have guys like Tyke Furlong who can compete with your starting scrum, but when you bring in your props, so you're not going to take off Furlong in the 50th minute when you bring on Oxenchair. But even though Furlong is one of the best tight end props, competing with a guy who's just come on, that's very tricky. And you'll see that the scrum, as South Africa proceeded, when they were trying to win the game, the scrum, they were getting a lot of scrum penalties in their favor. So the 7 split basically works, right? So that's a proven fact. And all these other physicality elements, they basically dominate the physicality aspect. But the one thing that you look at Ireland, right? So essentially, if you want to beat South Africa, you have to match up with them physically. And one thing that Ireland would have done, they did quite well, is they absorbed that physicality. When you look at things like defenders beaten, right? South Africa did win that, if I'm not mistaken. I think they did get 23 over Ireland's 20. Right, so they did win that battle. I think Delinde had a really good game. I can remember RK Snyman managing to get like a massive line break as well. So they do still beat defenders. They do get those line breaks. However, Ireland did quite well. I think especially their loose trio. Their whole team was working hard, but that loose trio worked really hard in defense. Right, and they also got like some key turnovers in different parts of the game. Most notably James Lowe, who the winger getting a turnover, that's quite massive. But essentially they worked really hard to make sure that yes, South Africa was still physically dominant, but it wasn't as dominant as, let's say, when they played the All Blacks. So I think Ireland can take that physicality, that pressure. But the question is, I think if they meet in the final, how long can they sustain that pressure? So that's going to be interesting to see. And then if you look at the Irish side of things, right, because so one thing that we highlighted was the line-out success, right? So the line-outs is basically with the 4, stats that we said they were going to win. There's line-outs, territory, line breaks and runs. Territory, line breaks and runs, all those things will come from your set piece, will come from your line-out. So essentially, when they came into the game, Ireland lost the first 4 line-outs. I think that was in the first 12 or 15 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. They were basically rattled at the line-out. And once I think, as the game progressed, right, so the first 12 minutes you get those wrong. But in the last, 80 minus 12? That's 68? About 68, 65 minutes. 68, 65 minutes. They basically managed to stabilize that. I think the end result was that I think they got 12 out of 18. Which means in the last 68 minutes, they only got one line out wrong, right? So once they got that part of their game right, that's when every other thing started coming into play, right? So with the territory, especially in the second half, they started, kicking a little bit longer, putting pressure, daring South Africa to come back at them, right? So they were kicking long behind the Springboks, and I think that bit of game management helped them to win the territory in the end. And I think that, that's one of the, so we've talked about game management, kicking, set piece, so all of those 2 things come in tandem, right? And then you get your line breaks, right? So I think once they stabilize you, I think Bandi Aki had a very good line break in the first half. But getting line breaks against South Africa is quite tricky because you are working with a team that's going to press on you really hard, right? So Faf de Klerk and guys like Peter Steff are trying to press on you. But the thing with Ireland is they, I think we were talking about this before we started recording. They play all these you've got guys running in different lines, looping around the playmakers, coming on the inside, and those are the different ways that you can, just a simple inside pass. Those are the ways that you can beat a Russian defense. A kick behind. They didn't really, incorporate a lot of short kicks, but I think Ireland was equipped to tackle that Russian defense, and also just a delayed pass. I can remember in the first half before they scored, Gary Ringrose had a little delayed pass when the defense rushed. He just delayed that pass a little bit, and then he passed it long to Hugo Keenan, who almost scored just before Mike Hansen scored as well. So, all those things, I think Ireland, you can tell that, yes, they did win the line breaks or clean breaks. It's because of things like that, because even in the face of physicality, they've got things that can counter, from kicking to timing in your passes to, also like guys running the correct lines as well. So I think that was a very interesting thing. So I think when you see this game, essentially, it's not about who, a lot of what the different teams did wrong, is, except maybe kicking, which we're about to get into.
Yeah.
But I think it's more about what the other team did more correct than the other. So, so I think that's... It's just interesting to see that, this is the way that the game played out.
I mean, definitely. I mean, we're just... I was personally a bit shocked at just how well the predictions went out. And I guess...
Yeah, you guys are doing quite a job.
We're trying, man. We're trying. But yeah, so like you said, it is about... I do agree it is about other teams did more correct. And one thing I like was actually in Faf de Klerk's interview afterwards, where it was also about the game, and then first thing he says is, I had fun, right? And how often do you hear a player say, I had fun, and they lost, But genuinely... it's a fair result. Even if the Springboks won it, that would have been a fair result.
Right.
Clearly, these are what number 1 and 2.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely. Yeah, you can tell.
This is But now, right. So now we're just gonna get into the one point that you can look at, right, which is the kicking, right? Because ultimately, there is, I guess, in statistics we can talk about causality. If this had happened, then that. If this had happened, of course, there are a lot, right? We can make up all these scenarios, right? But then it's not like, if South Africa's kicking was on point, everything else would stay the same. But it's definitely something worth looking at, and I do think it is something. It really could have contributed to their losing, right? So now, if we look at here, we're just going to compare the number of tries, the number of conversions, the number of penalty goals for the top three for the top 3 nations, right? For France, South Africa, and Ireland. Right, just to see where they rank relative to everyone else, right? But our key focus will be on them. So just starting off with tries, right? Where South Africa rank 4th with 14 tries. France is 2nd, and Ireland has 21 tries already in this World Cup, right? Ireland has 21 tries, 20 conversions, right? That's quite something, right? And then we have South Africa with 14 tries and 8 conversions, right? So, and then we have France with 18 tries and 16 conversions, right? So just as a percentage, we have Ireland with 96% conversion rate, right? France with 89%, and South Africa all the way down to 57%. And I think all of their try conversions came from their blowout of, who are they playing?
Romania.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I forget the team, but when they're blowout, right, and that's where their conversions came from. So, but even then, we do have the low. South Africa does have the lowest, right, of those top teams, and then we look at where they rank with penalty goals, right, right, and just look at that, Samoa on top, Wales. Now, granted, of course, these games aren't really a 1-to-1 comparison, because the thing with rugby is the difference between a tier 1, tier 2 team, or even even if you're on the same tier, it's just, if we can say tier 1.5, right? The difference between teams is large, right? So but anyway, just looking at this, South Africa rank 10th to penalty for penalty goals, which is 3, right? Which I think averages out to about 1 a game, right? So that's really low, and we feel like this is where Andre Pollard coming back in could possibly strengthen them, right? Actually, in the conversions, but more so in the penalty goals when they do decide, to go for that. But Kumbi, I'll pass this on to you, right? Just give us the context on this.
The thing is with this, it's also kind of tricky because, okay, with the critical games, right, like you said, they've basically missed all their conversions in the 2 games that have been important against the other 2. Essentially, Manie Libbok hasn't made a single conversion. So, obviously that 8 out of 14, all those 8 came from 1 game that Libbok didn't play. So that's, so I think that's a bit concerning. I've said that there's no cause of concern in previous videos, but I think it's looking a little bit concerning, right? So that's the first thing. And then the penalties, it also depends on, like you said, who you're playing, because if you're playing against like a Romania, you're not going to go for posts, right? So maybe that number is a little bit lower. But in the games that they played against Ireland, I think they missed 2 penalty goals, right? So they left 11 points out there. No, 3 penalty goals, because they missed 1 conversion and they missed 3 penalties, right? So it's looking like a little bit of there's cause for concern there. But then I think now just going back with Pollard, it's not just like an easy decision just to put him in, because maybe you're sacrificing the 7-1 split. Maybe now you have to go 6-2, and then you have to remove a Marco van Staden. Maybe you don't have a backup thrower if like a Dion Fourie isn't throwing quite as well. So that's your insurance policy that's gone out the window, right? So there's a little bit to think about here. But I do think, Andre Pollard has the experience. I think put him in, but then realize that also with Libbok, he's also playing, his open field playing is also really well right now.
Yeah,
right. So trade-offs. So it's where do they go? But I do think in the playoffs and the quarterfinals they are going to need Andre Pollard in there. It's just now how does the rest of the 22 positions, where does he start, and where does everyone kind of fit in? How does that affect every other position? So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, but that's a nice problem to have. Where do I fit in Andre? That is a very nice problem to have. But so from our side, these are the stats. We hope you find value in them. Thank you so much for the support and for the comments in the last video. We do read all of them, and we do incorporate what we can. But overwhelmingly positive. I think we're building a good community here. This is a data-driven channel, and I am loving the interactions in the comments. I'm loving the fan. We're all enjoying the World Cup. We wish we could be there at the World Cup, but we're here, and it's just
the next one. The next one will be there.
Right. We'll be right by the side with our models. But so from me, right, thank you.
Actually, I just want to finish off just by because we were supposed to thank, we were planning on thanking everyone for like 100 subscribers, but now we find ourselves having to thank to say thank you for 150 subscribers. So we're really growing in a way that we didn't expect. So we appreciate the support. We appreciate you, all the feedback as well. We appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for your continued support.
Yeah. And if you haven't already, please do like, share, subscribe.
Absolutely.
Right, we're growing something here. Hopefully you enjoyed. We grow together, and we can add value to you. Otherwise, from me,
100%.
Right, we'll see you next week.
See you next week. All right. Cheers.
Athstat experience.
The analysis you've seen is powered by Athstat Marketplace, the best marketplace to get your digital memorabilia directly from teams, athletes, and brands. If you're a sports fan or an athlete, visit athstatmarketplace.io and start creating and sharing memories. Link in the description.